Hello, beautiful ladies, and welcome back to The Subconscious Expert. We have a success story today, a very incredible success story, which I cannot wait to get our teeth into. I've already given her a stellar intro, but welcome, Pippa. I'm so happy for you to be on the podcast today.
Me too. I've made it. Having listened to all of them over the course of maybe one weekend, it's very nice to be on the other side.
I love it. Yeah, you're on the other side in the success, and I cannot wait to talk about it. I think you were definitely, prior to us working together, one of the clients that binged the podcast, weren't you?
I did. I definitely did. And it was quite amazing how quickly I took action to work with you, because my husband was like, what is going on? You never do things this quickly. Are you sure about this? I was like, yes. I've never been sure about anything in my life.
I love that. Confirmation. And here we are about to talk about all the success. So Tell everyone where you are at from kind of like subconscious perspective and behaviors around that part with the business and kind of strategy. Where were you at when we started working together?
So I've had my business for 4 years, and we probably worked together when I was about 3.5 years in, and I was feeling a bit stuck. I kind of had set everything up and working with brilliant people and loving the work, but just feeling like I couldn't quite figure out what was holding me back. And I loved the fact that you offer kind of the mindset and the strategy, because I've done lots of work separately on strategy and not to work separately on mindset. And what I thought I needed was kind of more of the strategy, as we know.
As always. Every message.
So true. But
every content piece I put out.
Exactly. But I think that's what really appealed to me to work with you, was that it wasn't just more mindset stuff. It was kind of then using that to implement it into the business to get the kind of the results that I wanted.
Yeah.
So I was kind of feeling quite stuck, like I'd done enough mindset stuff, obviously not. Like I really was ready to like step into who I wanted to be, and I couldn't quite figure out how to do that.
Yeah. And I think that next level for you was actually quite clear at the time, wasn't it? Like you knew what that was going to look like. You knew what you wanted it to look like from monetary perspective, from a feeling perspective, from how it looks in the business. And I think it was just joining those dots, really what we did. And I know we'll go into most of it as we go through, but I think it was really powerful that you came with such an awareness and such an openness to it. And I think that's probably down to what you heard in the podcast of like, this is what I did. And you're like, right, I'm ready. Like, please go into my brain. But I do remember us having the conversation, and I just wanted to tap on this today because I know many other people say this to me, and you were a little bit like, I'm a little bit scared of what will happen when I unlock my subconscious. Just talking to kind of the fear around that just before we started.
I think I'm not particularly very good at being particularly vulnerable and telling people what's going on actually behind the scenes. And I was really scared about kind of opening up and actually like talking it through and bringing it into reality almost.
Yes.
I guess because I was also probably a bit scared of what the answers would be and whether they would take me in the direction that I wanted to go in. And I always remember saying to you as well at the beginning, you won't be able to hypnotize me. Like, I'm very resistant to all of that. And then there's me lying on my bed going, oh my God, this is amazing. I've been taken into this. So yeah, I think I had definitely had some guards up about the whole thing in terms of not feeling like I was coachable or able to get to the levels that I needed to get to kind of within me to make the changes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a couple of sessions, like I always have 1 or 2 sessions that stick into my head, or like 1 or 2 moments that stick in my head with any client that I worked with. But like, I remember when we first found Mrs. Doubtfire, which I'm sure we'll speak about today. We found a couple of parts that were having such big connections to stopping you from doing things, or, and launching the podcast, which we'll also talk about today. And I think once you started to get comfortable with going into those, it just unlocked. We just kind of flew, didn't we, with the subconscious work. Did you find that?
Absolutely. I think it was almost like the penny dropped really quickly, and that then helped me to understand and explain it. And I think, I mean, I mentioned to you as well when we first started working together, like, I'm really interested in the woo side of things, but I can't really work with people who are too woo for me because it freaks me out.
Yeah.
And I think because everything that you do is rooted in science and understanding, not that I'm scientific at all, but it really helped me to explain those elements. So it then helped me to understand it, and then to be able to relate them back to kind of different specific things that have happened to me, and understand why that they were holding me back, and that then helps me to then work through it and then move forward. So I was able to then move forward quite quickly because I kind of could understand it and explain it to myself.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think that's why I love putting them together, because I think there is an element of the woo world, as people call it, that where you go, really, like, okay, like, but when you're actually, like you said, it doesn't have to be backed in actual science, but when you understand the reasons, like the reasons of the reticular activated system, or the reasons behind many things, you go, that's why it's happening. And like you said, that was really helpful for you. So let's kind of go back to the start. What was some of the biggest things that we broke through at the beginning from your point of view?
I don't know why and where I got it from, but I think I felt a bit, well, it was the imposter. It was like, I mean, the word fraud came up, didn't it?
Yeah.
I kind of felt like somebody was going to find me out. And so therefore I needed to keep playing small in order to not be found out. I don't know what I was being found out about, by the way.
We never found the answer.
No, we never found the answer. And I think there were a few narratives that I'd kind of got really stuck in, like this whole like Stephen Bartlett, you know, you have to have struggled to be an entrepreneur and to make it. Do you remember that one? And I was like, I don't really have a struggle story. I just like, I've had a lovely life and I'm really privileged and I'm very lucky, but I don't have a struggle. So how can I make myself kind of go bigger up to different levels? And there were a few things like that I kind of got stuck in this narrative that I kept telling myself, and it was really breaking those down and really understanding that they weren't making any sense and they were just holding me back.
Yeah, and I think from those two particular, especially with the struggle, like you then, from like an external perspective, you weren't talking about yourself, you weren't talking about the results that you got clients. You almost didn't, and I remember calling you out on this at one point, but like you almost didn't accept that you helped them get that. Like you were like, but I didn't do anything. And I'm like, Pippa, you did a lot in that situation. You know, it was like this claiming of the work that you help people do. And actually that's what we need and want to show when you're marketing your business, is that you have helped people get to these certain places, especially with what you do with PR. And I think from that moment where you saw that, you really started to shift in even how you showed up with your posts and stories, didn't you?
Yeah, I think your magnet, because when I was working with you, magnet was a really important part for me, really, to connect. And it was about using, so I'm really anti kind of that whole like American way of selling, and as a result of me being quite anti it, I've kind of almost like reversed the other way to almost, I was like, oh, I'm not going to sell, I'll just
not
wait
sell at all.
I'm just not going to sell, I'm just going to wait, because once the penny drops they'll realize that I know what I'm talking about and that I'm good at what I do, and they'll just come. And then it was magnet that I was like, no, I do really need to be like talking to my customers and showing them, and that's what I've really stepped into. It's like I work with the most amazing business owners. They get the most incredible results. They're getting featured in the magazines. They're not paying thousands of pounds for kind of big PR agencies. They're doing it themselves in a way that's working for them to grow their business, and I have stepped into owning that now, and that has been such a shift for me, and I feel the joy again in it. Like I love it.
I love that. Yeah. So Magnet is my subconscious content course. If anyone wants to check it out, I'll pop it in the show notes. But it really is that, it really was that moment. And the reason why I remember this is because I was actually in Paris when Magnet was running. And I remember being on the Eurostar, and we had a very, very poignant conversation in Voxer whilst I was on said train. And I don't know why I remember it so clearly, but I really felt we unlocked a part of you
Yeah.
during that, because you'd had such realizations from this, I'm a fraud and I can't shout about the success, and I don't want to sell in that way, to you really seeing how you could do that, but just in such a subconscious way. And I think that made it feel very,
Yeah.
it made it feel easier for you, didn't it, in shifting into that. And actually you were like, God, people are actually voting on the polls and they're asking to work with me. And I was like, oh really? Lo and behold.
Yeah, it was amazing. I remember I started that conversation. I can remember it so vividly. I'd been walking around. I think we'd been working together for a few weeks, haven't we?
Yes.
And I was walking around and I was like, I literally feel this tension. And I remember messaging you on WhatsApp saying, is it normal to be like aching? Like my jaw was aching because I think I'd just suddenly taken on all of this kind of like tension that I'd been holding everywhere, and you were like, let's dig in. We literally then just unraveled all of this stuff.
Yes.
And it was really amazing.
It was amazing. And I think that's kind of where, do you mind talking about Mrs. Doubtfire?
No, let's talk about Mrs. Doubtfire.
That's where kind of we coined her Mrs. Doubtfire. So I do a lot of parts work with my clients. We almost detach from the emotions and the feelings that we have and make them into characters or whatever your subconscious does. And Mrs. Doubtfire for you was really the moment that you knew and understood what she was keeping you safe from. I think that has been such a powerful tool that you have gone on to use after we stopped working together, didn't you? After we finished working together. So Mrs. Doubtfire, what was she protecting you from? If you don't, you can be.
No, absolutely. Yep. I mean, so that whole doubt thing about whether am I good enough, can I do this, I think we kind of and I'd done a little bit of work before, so I kind of knew that there was a teacher when I was 6 or 7 that basically couldn't really deal with my enthusiasm and my excitement and all the things that as we work through are what make me really good at what I do. And it was like Mrs. Peel couldn't deal with those things. So I think at one point we did do some work around letting her go as well, but because of that I'd kind of been quashed when I was younger, and I think it made me doubt what I was doing, and it's come through kind of in various different stages of my life, and so basically this doubt shows up, but I've now kind of worked out that, she is Mrs. Doubtfire. I send her back to bake shortbread in the kitchen. And it is so freeing. Honestly, everyone who's listening to this now is probably thinking that I sound absolutely bonkers.
No, because you're in my world and I will have talked about it before.
But it is so freeing when I'm like, okay, am I actually not very good at this? Or is that just this doubt, Mrs. Doubtfire? Is that just her talking about it? And we have a little chat and I put her back in the kitchen and then I carry on. And I don't let it dictate every step that I take anymore. And in fact, she definitely doesn't show up half as much as she used to anymore.
We really decrease that neural pathway, because that's, really from a scientific point of view, that's what we're doing. Every time that voice comes in, which we coined Mrs. Doubtfire in this certain scenario, the more you listen to her, the stronger it was getting. So, prior to us working together, that's why you were coming. We were just looking at one of Pippa's hypnosis tracks that she filled in for me. But you came saying, I don't have what it takes to take my business to the next level, or I'm a bit of a fraud and I don't know what I'm doing, or I should play small because I can't do big. Like all of these things that you fully believed prior to us talking to her was stopping you from launching the podcast, from working with the type of clients that you wanted to work with, because I know we really worked on that, didn't we? From putting yourself in places. You were like, oh no, other people do it, like they're in the places already, so I'm not going to do that. All of those external things were coming and leading from the collective of doubt that you were having. And I think the way that you can now speak to her again, and I think that's quite refreshing for people to hear, is that she might still pop up every now and again. She might, because you're going to the next level and it's natural for her to go, hang on, this feels scary. But actually you now have the tools to go and bake the shortbread. Was it shortbread?
Yeah, she goes back to the kitchen in her, and she bakes some shortbread. Absolutely. And that's what I do quite a lot. I mean, I'm sure lots of your clients are this, I think, what would I say to Beth now? And what would she
Yes.
say back? And I'm
Yes,
like having that
literally.
conversation. So it's been so freeing in terms of being able to, because I knew that I wasn't really a fraud, and I knew that I had the potential to take, otherwise I wouldn't have worked with you. I would have just stayed in that little
Small.
box forever.
Yeah.
But it's just been so freeing to not have that brain space taking up where all those kind of negative thoughts and those, things that are just not going to help you move forward. So it's so freeing.
Because it was taking up a lot of time, wasn't it? And I think that's something else that we worked on, was you being more savvy in the back end of the business and kind of what you were doing behind the scenes and how we build that out. And I think like the less we have this emotional fatigue that's constantly this doubt and questioning and fraud and yada, 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 you get to the start of the day and you're like, I am knackered. Like I can't physically do anything today because I've spent the whole morning worrying about what today is going to look
absolutely.
like.
And it's a really valuable thing for me to experience, obviously, because I do work with small business owners and entrepreneurs who are putting themselves out there. And if I just came in going, go on, just do it, why aren't you doing it? Like, I totally get the overthinking and the analysis and the questioning of whether you should send that email or not. But because I've now got the tools to work with, I can help other people to do that too. So it's been really inspiring from that side of things as well.
Oh, I love that. See, the ripple effect of the subconscious work, I think. But from kind of working on that and removing the doubt, or being able to deal with the doubt and getting through a couple of those stories, quite a lot happened, did it not?
Yep.
Do you want to tell us?
Yeah, it's all gone. I mean, it has literally, I feel like, I talk a lot about the snowball, like rolling down the hill and the momentum building. And I feel that like, since we worked together, the momentum, that snowball's been rolling fast down that hill. So I launched the podcast that I thought about for 4 years.
Woohoo!
I mean, literally and it came to, as we were kind of going through it, it would always go back to, well, we just need to launch the podcast, don't we? Just should launch the podcast. And to the point where you were like, right, we're spending the next session on working out how to launch the podcast. I was like, okay, let's do it. So I got the podcast up and running, and that has really helped me from an authority piece, from a connection piece, as an additional marketing tool, as a PR tool, as I teach other people to kind of use their podcast as a PR tool. And I love it. I really enjoy doing it. So that has, brought me another level of joy to the business as well. I put my prices up. Woohoo. Because I do have the money mindset thing's also been interesting. So I've known that that's a big thing for me, and I've done a lot of work on it. But do you remember, I was really stuck at a number, and I kind of had basically done this money mindset work about 2 years ago, where I'd basically got a figure in my head that I wanted to earn, and I'd reached that, but then I kind of wasn't going any further than it. And I'd told myself that everyone in the world earned that amount of money. Only earns that amount of money. Until my friend like casually just put, like, it was relevant to a conversation we were having, but she mentioned how much money she had. And I was like, what? Everyone in the world earned that amount, apart from those liars on Instagram. And we realized, didn't we, that I'd programmed everything. Like my code on my phone was that number, my password, like, because I'd done all of this money mindset stuff. So that was really freeing as well. Changed all the passwords, I actually moved away from that number in terms of ever thinking about it.
Good.
And again, it's just been so freeing in terms of, I think, just understanding my potential and not feeling restricted, and like I'm coming from a certain industry and that's how much everyone earns, and
that's how it is. Yeah. Because even you were like, and I looked on LinkedIn and this is what people are earning. And like, it was kind of like this decision that your subconscious had made so many years ago, and still sticking to that. And when you came back into Voxer and you're like, Beck, it's even my password. What the hell's going on? So just to change that has been amazing. And, you had quite a few higher containers come in and come through. And I think that just kind of letting and releasing that was such a massive help. I did want to speak about, and I I know because we did quite a lot of work on it, but more so for the fact that you listened to a podcast the other day when I was talking about having your, having the CEO plan in place and knowing what you're doing and what you're working towards and what you're launching. And you messaged me not long ago being like, I've just listened to your podcast. Nothing resonates because I'm doing it all.
Yeah, absolutely. And also there was another course that you started doing when we were working together. And I was like, I started doing it. I was like, I don't need this.
Don't need to do it.
I don't need to do it because I'm doing it already. And actually, I didn't want to go back into kind of some of that mindset stuff because it was almost like taking me in the wrong direction. So I was really focused on knowing where I was going.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at planning still. Like, when you talk about last minute Haydon,
yes.
I'm still like, I'm trying really hard. Like, I'm not going to, say that I've revolutionized every element of my business.
No.
But I have a plan. Like, I've launched new things because I've created the space for them. I've got a new course that I'm starting kind of in a couple of weeks that I don't think I would have done if we hadn't worked together, because I had this formula of what I thought would work in the business, and it was working, and it does work. But I think by like freeing up my brain space to allow myself to create new opportunities for myself, and I realized that there were other ways that people wanted to work with me. So I've kind of created those, and that's been exciting.
Yes.
Whereas I wouldn't have done that before we worked together, because I was so scared that what if it went wrong? What if I did it and I failed and everyone would laugh at me, and all of those things that we tell ourselves. So
yeah, huge. And the way that you show up for it as well. What was your biggest kind of aha moment or favorite bit of us working together?
Oh God, that's such a good question. I think just the belief, like the realization, and I've always known it. I've known that I am really good at what I do and that I have that potential, but feeling like taking that step mentally and almost physically as well to go, I can do this, and this is going to work, and this is like, I'm not doubting. Mrs. Doubtfire has gone back to that kitchen. And it's just made me like so excited about my business again. That for me is the key.
I love that. And because that excitement holds how you show up as well, doesn't it? How you show up on socials, or how you create the courses or deliver the podcast. I think that excitement shone through, and then people were like, she's here, like she's arrived. And it really was that burst of energy. And like you said, like we've spoke about, I think Magnet, the content course, where you had that understanding subconsciously behind it, you were like, yes. And from then that trajectory, and it hasn't stopped. And you launched the goddamn podcast.
I did it. It's there.
She did it. If anyone was kind of in your position right now as to where you were before we started working together, what would you say?
Well, I imagine that they're going to listen to this and probably sign up tomorrow, because that's what I did. I think you have to take these steps towards your own growth and like your own enjoyment. And if you're doing your business and not finding the joy in it, then that's a horrible place to be. I've been there, and I've had the kind of the worry and the stress. And what I've realized is, making that investment of working with the right people is so powerful for you.
Yeah.
Working by yourself all the time, it can, especially for people like me, I'm an extroverted thinker, so I love to bounce ideas off each other. So yeah, finding the right people, finding Beck to actually unlock that stuff within you is just, it's brilliant. It's exciting. And I would go for it.
Yeah. I think you said, don't listen to the podcast because you will be spending money or something. I loved that phrase. Oh, yeah. I just love it. I love it. I loved every minute of working with you. And I think just to see the sheer trajectory, just like you said, the snowball, I love that analogy too. Like, and there were times where you were like, is this snowball gonna roll? Like, please, there were times where we had those conversations, and I think that pure resilience and patience that you had with yourself during, our time together. And it was only 3 months that we worked together, and so much changed, didn't it? And so much has changed since. For you to still be feeding back now the wins that you're having is just so amazing. So I couldn't be happier with what happened inside the container.
Yeah, it was brilliant. I remember saying to you at the end, I was like, right, I'm ready for it all now. Come on,
Let's
like,
go.
bring
Yeah,
it on.
literally.
It is, isn't it? And it's like you kind of, then it's like working out strategically. So once you have done that kind of mindset work, and I guess they go hand in hand forever, don't they? But it's like, how now do I take what I know I can do? And I guess that's why I launched this course that's launching in a few weeks. And I've like looked at my accelerator program. I'm now offering that for 3 months.
Amazing.
Deep dive. Like I'm changing bits of the business to kind of reflect where I want to go with it as well, which has been, it's just so freeing when you know that you kind of have the potential to do whatever you want to do within it.
Oh, I have goosebumps everywhere. I love it. But let's kind of segue nicely onto you and what you do. I know I've obviously already given you an intro, but let everyone know who you are, who you help, what you do.
So my background is PR. I've worked in PR my whole career, worked big agencies, big brands, big budgets. And I realised what I actually loved doing was working with entrepreneurs, innovators, small business owners who are doing such interesting things, but maybe don't have the 5, 10, 15, 20K a month that PR agencies charge. And I also edited a publication for a bit. And that gave me a huge amount of insight into how wrong a lot of PRs get pitching. And I'm thinking this email's landed in my inbox and this person's being paid thousands of pounds to send this email and it's awful. I'm sure, so I think I can teach people to do this better. And that sowed the seeds for the PR set, basically, which I started to make PR accessible to these people who are doing brilliantly interesting things, have great stories to tell. And yeah, basically I kind of work with people to get them known for what they do. And I absolutely love it.
I think it's so interesting, isn't it? Because I think PR, there's a collective story behind PR from like, I'd say like 20, 30 years back, right? Where you just think it's getting in a newspaper or, like that's kind of like what it feels like, but it's so different now. It's changed so much. Just explain how it helps businesses now and what that looks like.
Yeah,
from your perspective.
And actually we did a bit of work around this as well, didn't we? Because that narrative that is out there around PR, I was finding like quite stifling, and I was kind of like finding it really difficult to communicate to people. Or I had kind of like, oh, well, people think this about PR. People won't ever pay for PR,
Yes,
and it was, and I had to do a lot of work through that. But basically when I'm teaching PR and talking about PR, a lot of people just focus on press coverage. And yes, that is one big part of PR, but basically PR is about getting known for what you do. It's about getting you talked about when you're not in the room. It's about getting you talked about in the right places by the right people. It's using third-party endorsement. So somebody else is saying, check this person out. Don't, it's not just you taking an ad out saying, look how great I am. It's somebody else saying, yeah, this person is worth checking out. And that is so powerful for you as a business owner, whatever business you've got. And what I teach people to do is to understand kind of who your audience is, what your business objectives are, because that's going to kind of dictate the strategy that we'd work to. And then it's about utilizing what you have within your business and your stories and your expertise and getting you, it might be magazine articles, it might be newspapers, but it might be podcast interviews, it might be speaking opportunities, looking at leaning into what you enjoy doing, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, but yeah, and connecting to people through kind of other people's platforms, basically.
And I think that's like the ultimate trust builder, isn't it? When anyone else is saying or shouting about the person that they're talking about, and all of their audience trust them. Like I know most of my clients of last year came through 2 people. And what you came through, one of them that just constantly, she had great success and everyone was like, oh my God, who have you worked with? And it was Becky. And there's so many avenues for people to then find you. But I think it is that trust, isn't it? That's what you're building with PR, because you're getting in front of new audiences and the trust is coming from the person that's the third party that's delivering
it. It's that credibility piece. And I think, I was saying this to you off another time, but what you've done with Instagram is amazing. The fact that you've built your whole business on Instagram, for a lot of people out there now, Instagram doesn't work in the same way that it did 5 years ago. And,
Yeah.
looking at places where you can tap into new audiences, different people, rather than just talking to the same echo chamber. PR is so powerful for that. And I think often we just pick our phone up. The default is to kind of scroll, isn't it?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
actually, you could be using that time to connect with people, using your network. All of this stuff is PR. And I think we've been so indoctrinated by the PR industry into certain things, like you can only do PR if you've got loads of budget, you can only do PR if you've got a little black book of contacts, you can only do PR if you've learned how to do it professionally. I mean, none of those are true. So I'm really about busting those myths and showing people that they can do it themselves, and the power of it. It's so powerful.
Yeah, especially for new audiences and new eyes, like you said, rather than selling to the same 100 people that watch your stories.
Yeah.
Where would you say, obviously your membership, but like where would you say for people to start if they're kind of in the Instagram, because there's going to be, everyone on here that's listening is going to be some sort of female business owner, so they're definitely on Instagram.
Oh, totally.
But just to kind of reach that new audience, where would you say for them to start?
What, to learn how to do it?
Yeah,
I would say my podcast.
There you go. Woohoo! You wouldn't have been able to segue that last year.
Last year I would have said, find me on Instagram. No, and don't get me wrong. So my whole thing is about integrating your PR with the rest of your marketing. So I'm not saying don't do Instagram at all, but I think we can look strategically at how we fit it all together and make it work for each other. So my PR, so I actually did, I had my biggest PR opportunity at the weekend. I spoke at an event, a huge industry event called Top Draw. And I don't think I would have done that if we hadn't worked together, which is ironic, I know, seeing as I teach people to do their own PR. But I put on those big girl pants in October and I pitched myself for it because I'd seen other people do it in the PR world, and I was like, oh, that's their space. They've got, and it's like, no, come on.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. And it was everything that I teach, other people to do, but I kind of had to take a spoon of my own medicine. And I did this speaking event it was only a few days ago, so the impact of it is quite hard to measure, but already, the DMs are going off. The even my Insta numbers have gone up. I've had discovery calls booked in. It's so powerful when you do it in the right places with the right people. So a good place to start is my podcast, or just have a chat with me on Insta, and
go from there. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. I have loved having you on. I feel like it's been a real celebration. But if you want to check Pippa out, obviously all of the links are in the show notes. Her Instagram, her podcast, membership, most definitely. And I do think it's kind of time that we started looking elsewhere other than Instagram. And like we said, not bashing Instagram at all. It's been amazing, but I do think the world is changing and we need to work with it rather than kind of bashing your head up against it. And I think your world does exactly that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, thank you for coming. I cannot wait for people to listen to this, and I will see everyone on the next episode. Bye.
Thank you so much.